All right. Hey, everybody. Wanted to take some time to again set up the next podcast for We the Collective Fitness and use it to talk about an intention. I just didn't have an opportunity to film until now, but I wanted to make sure that I went ahead and spoke a little bit more about the intention, and maybe it's something that helps somebody else in the future. So if this is something that you're looking for, hopefully it'll help you go ahead and get through another week in your life or to kind of take on some brand new challenges that are going to be, something that's going to change you a little bit more. Because again, we're all collectively going through some things, so might as well just try to help each other to the best of our ability. So this last week, I set my intention around a character known as Jessica Cruz from the DC universe. Big fan of the character, just because of the story arc that the person has and dealing with some hardships of anxiety and depression, being agoraphobic, having survivor's guilt. So there's all these other mental capacity things that she has to go ahead and deal with. And then a Green Lantern ring shows up. And she can't understand, why it selected her. She feels she doesn't have any willpower. She kind of feels like she's just like a bad person. So she doesn't feel that she deserves any of this. And from the story, we go ahead and learn that she's incredibly capable. But there's an underlying thing of retconning. And in the story, it gets retconned that the Green Lantern ring itself is actually this thing from Valthum. And Valthum is a very old Green Lantern character. And I believe it's kind of closer to associated to fear. So somebody who's really scared and timid, and it's basically like a fake ring. And she's using that ring for a really long time, and then actually is able to develop and grow willpower, and eventually gets an actual Green Lantern ring. So I wanted to use this as some chance to talk about, when we start to deal with things that we're struggling with, things that are becoming a bigger challenge, to come back to the concept of, well, I can handle this, and kind of even setting the pace for yourself, and get a good understanding of what you need to kind of help yourself push forward. So I have a couple of points up on my other screen. So if you see me looking around like a weirdo, that's kind of what I'm doing, just kind of taking, have some notes here. And what I wanted to kind of point out what the overlap here for I can handle this and kind of using it for, for fitness overall. A lot of times I have conversations with people and they'll go, big, strong people, tears in their eyes. And they'll tell me, I got to do all this work. It's like, of course, what we want to go ahead and get a good understanding early on of what we can handle. So if we went into a training scenario and you've never squatted before, there's no way I'm going to load it up with 1,000 pounds and tell you to walk it out and do your best. Like, that's way too much for somebody to handle. But to take a few minutes of their time and walk them through proper form of something that they can adjust to, and recognizing some of the other support that they're going to go ahead and need to get started, because we try to do too much all at once. We tell ourselves that it's like, okay, now we're well into February. There's a lot of people who've already given up on their New Year's resolution because we're this far in, and they just have a problem sticking to things that they need to get done in their own life. And hopefully this is a way to teach you how to handle that a little bit more effectively. So again, starting a new fitness regimen can be daunting. When we go ahead and overcome our fears and our doubts, we can take the first step. Remember, taking a small step can lead to big changes over time. Start with simple exercises like walking for a few minutes a day and gradually increase the intensity and duration. So when we go ahead and get started, the idea is not to start out full speed. Incorporate one extra walk into your day. Take one thing of processed food that you or high caloric food and just swap it out for something else once in a while. People get into it and they're like, I got to run for an hour, I got to work out for an hour, and I'm only going to have cucumbers and water. And then they wonder like a week later while they're, trying to down their fourth, double cheeseburger and saying like, I've earned this. It starts to kind of fall in on itself. And suddenly it becomes something that we're not really gunning for. So to incorporate these small changes into what you're capable of handling, and it should just be the smallest step forward. That's all you really need. The smallest step forward to make progress. And as I continue to learn about training, one of the big takeaways that I've learned is that a good portion of training is just until it becomes overbearing, and then you stop for a second. So to get up to that moment and say, well, I can handle up to this and move towards that, that's going to be my indicator of how far I can really, really go. So when we go ahead and start to face more of the challenges of making these changes, um, I know we can find this thing where we just find it easy to give up. We'll start to kind of look down on ourselves, start to get angry with ourselves and say, well, we'll just give up. And it's like, well, you know what? That's I'll never be that anyway. Kind of self-defeating, conversations with ourselves. And in those moments, you're really losing uh, because you wanted to go ahead and make a change. And now you're just wishing to make a change, but that's never really going to happen until you kind of put the actions into play of the person that you wish to become. So, like, even getting into a tough workout, maybe at first, man, you feel incredibly sore the next day. Like, those days are going to happen. They're supposed to once in a while. But the idea is not to train so hard that you can't physically walk the next day. It should be some nuance to the discomfort, but it shouldn't be like crippling pain the next day. That's not what you're trying to go for in this one. But again, people go ahead and get into this routine and say, 10 years ago when I was working out, this is how I worked out. And then they're like, well, what have you done anything similar to that since then? No, it's like, well, then you're not the same person starting at the same point. I like to compare this to a Stoic lesson about a man in a river. So no man steps in the same river twice. And the concept of that is as we age and start to evolve ourselves throughout time, we're not going to be the same person anymore. So for myself, I set a rule that every 5 years, I need to be a little bit different, challenging myself to something new, something challenging, something fun that is going to go ahead and make me a little bit different. Because if I kept the same mind state from 0 to 5 as I do now, or I kept the same mind state as from 5 to 10, or 10 to 15, or 15 to 20, or 20 to 25, even 25 to 30. Now getting closer to that 40 side of it. So again, when I go ahead and get to 40, I should not behave and think and act as if I'm 15. We're not supposed to be that person anymore. That person's still part of us, but we're supposed to continuously evolve. And then for the river itself, the water's constantly moving. So the story that gets told of where that water was at one point is never going to be told, but it's always going to be new water. The likelihood that it's the same drop of water that's coming across your foot as you step into the river is infinitesimally small. So we're always changing. So we never step into the same moment twice. And we give ourselves that opportunity to say, well, I can handle this at this moment. And that becomes the piece that goes ahead and compel us to go forward. Say, well, I can handle this. That means maybe I can handle just a little tiny bit more next time. So if we go ahead and take these tougher instances of what we're having, like a really tough workout, and it's like, well, I have to do this grueling workout until I can't walk anymore. No, you don't. Break it into smaller steps. Some stuff that's really, really effective, especially if we have something like a home gym or just something where you kind of train at home, is to break the exercises up over the entire day to still get some of your work in. So for a good example, I was working remotely yesterday from here. Love the place. What can I say? And I was working remote here, and I had some time throughout the day as reports and stuff for running, and I was able to fit in my workout over a couple hours throughout the day. So I'd go and hit maybe 1 or 2 sets, and then I go back to work for maybe 20, 30 minutes. I go back out, hit 2 or 3 sets, and go back until I was just kind of tired. Not really feeling super beat up. I felt like I've recovered really well. I'm nice and ready for today. So it was a really, it was a good back workout. So breaking it down into smaller pieces throughout the day can make it a little bit more manageable. So instead of thinking you have a grueling hour to get through, think, you know what? I'm just going to knock out 10 push-ups a couple times throughout the day. I'm going to go for a walk a couple times a day. I'm going to take the stairs as many times as I can. I'm the standard stuff that we hear, like park further away, at the grocery store, or just to set time to go do a little bit of the work. So again, it's not to say, well, hey, I don't have an hour. Maybe you got 10 minutes to walk around the block. That is a perfectly good starting point. Nothing wrong with that at all. And again, being able to say, well, hey, I walked around the block. That felt good. You know what? I have an extra 5 minutes. How much further can I get? And just challenging yourself to those little tiny things of what you can handle. Because again, when it becomes too much, we can easily get sidetracked and then tell ourselves that it's not important anymore. Because we, for whatever reason, like to tell ourselves that we can't. Or we give ourselves excuses on why we can't. Oh, I don't have time to work out. I have kids. Well, I don't have kids. So I don't get to use that excuse. But there's always an opportunity to find something for yourself. So again, it's like, hey, I don't have kids. Well, how are you playing with your kids that involves your fitness regimen? Can you do fun planks together? And I know it seems kind of stupid and silly, but how much can you handle in that moment? And say, hey, you know what? I want to take care of my body. And what you're doing in that scenario is you're teaching your children that do the same because they are going to pick up on the habits, even if you don't want them to know. So if you are behaving a certain way, acting a certain way, they're going to pick up on this. I don't need kids to know that. But if you give them that opportunity to reflect on, fitness and health as pivotal pieces of existing, because again, if you don't go ahead and kind of pay for the some good quality food now, or challenge yourself now, you're going to pay for that stuff later on with additional illness or not being able to move or live the life that you see fit. So giving yourself those small opportunities. And I've been claimed to be too positive sometimes, to be a little bit too optimistic. But I think it does actually help me with this. I can handle it kind of mentality, because then I start to look at more things in an opportunistic way. So if I want to go ahead and live my life super negative and pessimistic all the time, I'm probably only going to see negative, pessimistic things around me. And to not make it really political, I'll do this as fast as I can to get through it. I think if people are actively trying to make you scared, you really shouldn't be listening to them. Because if they're trying to point out all the negative things that are happening and not giving any hope, or giving some positive talk about, well, there's a good opportunity for us to improve, even if we can handle this much more of change. And by just denying that and saying, well, we need to be hard-headed and angry, you should be angry, your blood should boil, you should be upset by this. Those are usually people who aren't looking out for your best interest anymore. They're looking out for their own. So that's when you have to kind of take it into your own hands and say, well, am I going to let all these other things impact me? Right. So going right back into fitness, hey, I have a full-time job and I have kids, and, I don't have time for it. There's 24 hours in a day. We all get the same amount of time. And to take a good look at how you're spending your day. Are you spending 6 hours watching TV? 3 hours doom scrolling through TikTok and Instagram? Could you do those things while just sitting on a bike? Can you listen to a podcast and go for a walk? Or even just listen to your favorite music and go for a walk. Those are perfectly, perfectly fine things. But we get to pick every single moment of our day, and we get to decide what we can handle at any given moment. And I think that we should test ourselves on a regular basis to see how much we can handle. Life is not meant to be easy. We're just here. So we're here. It doesn't owe you anything. Life doesn't owe you a damn thing at all. It never will. It doesn't owe you anything. It's on you to decide what are the important things that you want to do with your existence. To change the mental imagery of yourself to say, I can't, to I can handle this, and kind of moving forward. And one of the next tough pieces is recognizing consistency of that. So again, I mentioned before about it being, people giving up on their resolutions already, even though it's only February. They just give up on it really quick, because they set goals that are kind of unrealistic and they can't be consistently met. So like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna train 7 days a week. And you're like, well, how many days do you train now? It's like 0. It's way too much training. So we need to go ahead and keep in mind that the body's trying to adapt so it does not die, right? So when we go ahead and train ourselves, it kind of brings it a little bit to, oh no, okay, that was a little bit scary. I think we're gonna die. So I need to evolve myself so I don't. So that's why some of those moments that really feel like they're really overwhelming, they're supposed to kind of feel a little bit challenging. You should be, happy for the fact that you can do any of the work that you do, and just stay consistent to it. So even if you only have like 1 day a week to go do a legit workout, how are you putting other parts into the rest of the week to assist in this endeavor? Because if I give myself 1 day a week to go ahead and test, that's awesome. So every 7 days, I'm going to know something. But if I give myself a good opportunity to do it a little bit more, or to kind of space it in a way that I can recognize it sooner, it's going to be really beneficial, because I can then take note and make more adjustments. And what I learned from my regular accounting life is that, okay, let's say you have a yearly meeting. So in 365 days, you only get to meet once on it. So you have to make sure that you're really on the money for that one, because the course of the entire year is based on 1 day. Now, if you broke that into months, now we have 12 opportunities to go ahead and say, well, are we on the right course? And then we can go a little bit further and say, well, am I doing this on a weekly basis? So now I get 52 opportunities to go ahead and make sure that I'm adjusting to the right thing. And just by giving ourselves that opportunity, not everything needs to be super intense, but if we find some solid consistency in our work ethic and our efforts, we're going to make progress in the things that we want to get good at. So even if you take this outside of the scope of fitness, and I like to compare it to like you want to write a book, or you want to play the piano, or you want to, doesn't matter. You can pick your life, right? If you don't spend the time doing those things, you won't become those things. Like, I do not know how to play the violin. I don't really wish to learn to play the violin. It's not like some crack against people who do it. It's super, super cool. But I don't find it as pivotal to myself. So I don't need to train on it because that's not going to go ahead and change my life too much. Um, but if it was something that was really like kind of ingrained into me that I really do enjoy these things, I really do like doing fitness work and teaching and training people on this stuff. So I need to do that work a little bit more if I want to say I'm good at it. So I can't run around and say I'm a world-class violin player if I never played the violin. I can't say those things because then it's just a lie. But if I went ahead and tried once or twice a week and go, I'm learning it. I have one session every week where I go ahead and I spend half hour trying to learn it. I bet I'm going to make a lot of progress over time because that's the least amount that I can handle in that moment. I often like to make the weird comparison to it about like steroids or drugs or anything else like that. When people are like, well, how much should you do? And the least possible, the least amount possible. And and understand how that kind of helps you. So when you're thinking of things like, coping mechanisms, or maybe just using it for medicinal reasons, whatever your vices are, or something that you kind of look at and say, hey, I need this to go ahead and be that. Um, to recognize those pieces and say, well, what's the least amount that I can handle in these moments, so I can still be the one that's in control. Um, it's really important to make sure that you have a good understanding of your own personal abilities and what you wish to do. Because if you don't take a little bit of time to set up where your goals are, you have no direction on what you want to become. So taking a little bit of that time and saying, all right, I look at myself and I consider myself to be X, whatever that is. How am I behaving like that on a consistent basis? How much can I handle in that moment for what I wish to do? So, an example of that one, I picked up on running. So we have a 5K coming out next week. So on March 4th, over at We the Collective Fitness in Forest Park, we're doing an impromptu 5K. We're just going to run. You don't need to sign up. You just show up at the door. Don't care who you are. If you just want to go ahead and start running a little bit, that's all it needs to be. So this year I told myself I want to run more. So I have to run because I told myself that I would do those things. And I didn't start off by running a marathon. I started off with a mile, two, slowest stuff I've run in a long time, but I ran. We're talking 14-minute miles. I've never been quick, but hey, that's not the goal of this. The idea is to find the enjoyment of doing something that's really, really good for me. Running is a very human thing to go ahead and do. It's one of the reasons that we've become the thing that we are now, is because of our ability to be upright and be able to do that task. So I find it important to myself to say, well, you know what? I need to be able to do this for me. It doesn't have to be anybody else's deal. They can do whatever they like. But for myself, in taking a look at that, saying, well, okay, now I want to be able to run a half marathon this year. At some point, I want to be able to run 13.1 miles, hopefully in one sitting. I don't want to walk. I want to be able to do it all out. So the last couple of years, I've been hitting 10 miles. So I did 7 and 10. And now I want to push it just a little bit further because I think I can handle that much more. It's not like I'm trying to jump the numbers, something ridiculous. But now I give myself a goal that for this week, I have to hit 5 miles of running. However I get that done, if I hit the target at the end of the week, fantastic. I succeeded in my goal of what I wanted to do. And if I make it to the end of the week and I don't have 5 miles, I need to go ahead and reassess, well, what time could I have used? If this is truly important to me, how can I handle a switch in my life to say, I want to spend time doing this work? And understand that it's okay to fail. And it's okay to make the mistakes. And you know what? Sometimes you just end up missing a workout, or sometimes you're like, I do want the double cheeseburger. Um, but as long as we stay consistent on it and make these small advancements forward, you'd be surprised at how many things you can get done and how much you can really handle in your own existence. So hopefully that's something that can help you and achieve a little bit more of what you see within yourself, and celebrate those things and get really, really good, because you can handle this. Good luck.